Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November meeting of the Norfolk County Police Services Board. Just to go through the agenda briefly for everyone's interest, we do have a ceremonial activity, and that's a presentation to departing member David Murphy. We also have a presentation this morning, which we will get to shortly. Looking through the agenda, of importance will be a report to council on the community policing committees, moving forward with that. And is there anything from the members of the board that want to add to the list at this point? Seeing none, or any declarations of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. David, if you will come forward, please. So, David Murphy, this is your last meeting of the year.
You're going to miss me.
I am. Well, actually, the December meeting will be your last meeting,
Yeah.
but I may not be here for that. So
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that the board did express its appreciation on behalf of the council of Norfolk County and all of its staff and members, and that we wish you success in your future endeavors. Express gratitude for your volunteerism. 8 years on the board?
Yes.
8 years, and we appreciate that tremendously. You've done great work to promote and advance the activities of policing in Norfolk, and we are a better place today for that. So again, on behalf of her worship, members of council, members of the board, thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Anything you want to say to the board?
The best part is helping save $9 million over the last 4 years. I was part of that process, so that's probably the best part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that takes us to item number 4 on the agenda. And, your worship, since coming in, declaration of pecuniary interest, if any? No, thank you very much. Just to cover all the bases. Mr. Burley, please come to the podium for your presentation, if you don't mind. I will tell you that the board has copies of your material.
Good morning, address the council, mayor, everybody. My name is Scott Bruley. I'm here to represent the property owners and residents along the St. John's Road area. As a spokesperson for the residents and property owners of this area, I'm raising concerns with the speed, erratic driving habits, and noise on the St. John's Road, aka commonly known as the Stelco Speedway, amongst the commuters. Due to the topography here of the St. John's and Coxon intersection and the pavement markings showing passing through the intersection on both approaching hills, this has created a highly dangerous environment. And as you can see in the one photo that I had presented, you can see that the passing line's right through there. Since Stelco has taken over from U.S. Steel, the amount of trucks has increased, which is good for Stelco, better contracts for our local employees. Expansion at the quarry and the continuous building boom as the gravel trucks have also increased. Continuous growth in Port Dover and increased traffic in and out of town. And now we are seeing how the trucks are starting to pass through this intersection at excessive speeds. Commuters traveling east and west passing multi-vehicles at one time through here. It's not uncommon. Also, today's drivers, with the lack of knowledge regarding the rules of the road on who has the right of way while crossing and turning at an intersection. High volume of traffic at commuter times. And then just to add to the back equation, we have the east and west orientation of the road with the rising and setting suns adds another visibility factor, and with the dangerous passing occurring in this area. The truckers increased their speed before this intersection to have the momentum to make the hill on the other side of the intersection without having to shift and lose speed, which is human nature in the trucking world. Due to the repaving of St. John's Road, I approached the county engineering department on the pavement markings at this intersections. And the response was received and was to be looked at. And nothing has been done, and the road has been repainted twice since then. And just to add to this, as I approached engineering and had a conversation with the engineer at that time with the county, and told him that about the markings on the road, and he proceeded to tell me that I was wrong. So, but we didn't get in an argument or anything, and I just said that's the way it was. 2 days later, I received a call from him apologizing that I was correct, and that was, in his mind, that the markings on the road are wrong, and it should be corrected. But what happened is the road was finished repaving, they repainted it, the lines in it the same way, and then they come back to redo it again, and well, they forgot to tell the contractors, and they just repainted it the same way again. So that's the way it stands. The stories that, just to go a bit farther, the stories that you hear at this intersection are unbelievable. Is that myself just turning right off the Cockshut onto St. John's, proceeding west. I looked, I have 2 trucks coming down, I could see them cresting the hill, no problem. I turn right, the next thing I know, the second truck is passing the first one, downhill through the intersection at probably about 80 to 90 kilometers an hour. I'm going to the shoulder. Now, once you start telling this amongst other people, it's repeated. Everybody has a story like that. So I'm just trying to point out that there's a very bad problem there. Commuters the same way, is that they'll pass through there at unbelievable speed. So that's my one point. On the west side, from the top of the hill proceeding west, there are 9 driveways and 3 field entrances in this 0.6 of a kilometer road to Tisdale Road entrance. During the commuting and increased traffic times of the day, this has become a high volume passing area. If you look, I see if you look on the diagrams here, as the vehicles crest the hill westbound after the Cockshut intersection, it's a straight run to 24 highway. And they'll come over the top of the hill, and if somebody's doing the speed limit, it's nothing to see 2 vehicles pass 2 or 3 vehicles at the same time in that high density area of homes. Westbound vehicles and trucks sometimes pass 2 or more vehicles at a time. And then if you have a westbound vehicle turning south on Tisdale at high volume times, is that the brake lights, the engine brakes, the screech of tires is unbelievable. And this is not once a week, it's daily almost. So, there's a school bus pickup in this area, and the 2 residents are across from each other. And I was told by the parents that the school bus driver deems it such a highly dangerous area, will not allow the children to cross the road anymore to board the bus at one stop. So after the first pickup, the bus travels down the road, turns around, and comes up and picks up the second child on the other side of the road. 25 years ago, there was me and other residents, when all our children were growing up, we fought for school bus signs in this area. And we had them, the county put them up for us, and but they were taken down and never put back up. Local farmers along the road there are just beside themselves. They have no respect on the roads. One young fellow just told me that somebody clipped their discs last week at passing, didn't even stop. Just clipped their disc, kept on going, that was it. He just said, what am I going to do? Didn't do any damage to me. But they have no respect there. They say they're taking their lives in their own hands, really, in this, for the farmers. And they've asked if they could have some of those share the road signs that farmers have been putting up in the counties to the north and northwest of us. There's one here I'm going to ask the sergeant here. There was a request asked to put forward to the OPP is, why do the cruisers travel down the road so fast at very high excessive speeds with no lights flashing? We understand that there could be an emergency or whatever, but have their lights flashing. Is that all of a sudden you've got a car coming down so fast, but nothing? And that was asked of me to put towards you. And then what would be a safe permissible speed of a cruiser without its lights on? When the OPP are in the area, stepping up their speed controls, it is amazing the difference in traffic. Everybody's in their best behavior, and noise level is down about, believe it or not, at least 30% also. Yes, since the repaving, and I am not sure of this, I have asked around, but since repaving, noise level has increased there. And I don't know if it's because I've asked if it's reusing the pavement, the new tires, cheaper rubber, whatever, but noise level is up, So since the county's in the middle of a tough budget year, and requests like this is usually seen as a traffic study and look at things which cost taxpayers money, the residents have made a few suggestions to help the county to keep the costs down and create a safer road environment. The biggest problem along through here is always speed. And I believe the figures that the OPP have will see to that. So the biggest suggestion here is drop the speed at the two intersections, the Cockshut, St. John's, and the Blue Line and St. John's. The county has spent lots of money at the Blue Line. They're trying to make it safer. I believe there's been 2 major incidents at that road. For the sake of a few signs, a few gallons of paint to change the lines on the road, it could mean at least somebody's life. So number 3 highway, they have stoplights. They slow the traffic down. But here, they got one thing in mind, from number 6 to 24, as fast as they can. Everybody, the trucks and commuters and normal drivers. So, as I say, for the sake of a few signs, lower the speed, cut down the passing at these intersections. It's an easy fix. Takes the pressure off your engineering department, because from what I understand, as a council can pass a law changing speed and road signs within the county, and it doesn't need the province's permission. So, other than that, just for sake, yesterday I came from Simcoe, come down the Blue Line, turned east on St. John's, and there was 3 tractor trailers ahead of me going up the hill. I followed them up the hill, and I couldn't keep up to them. So I decided to tail them. I was doing 104 kilometers from the golf course through the intersection at the Cockshut, behind 3 transports. Now that's not right. So this is what our complaints are, and we'd just like some help from the county to try and make our lives a little better. So thanks very much. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Scott, for your presentation, and perhaps we'll ask Staff Sergeant to respond to the cruiser speed and that question first, and then we'll go to the members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bruley, for your presentation. In terms of cruiser speed, I would have to look at that closer on a case-by-case basis to know exactly where our officers are going and what they're doing. I can't give you a blanket statement as to what the acceptable speed is. It varies, determined on a call for service and what the emergency is.
Yeah, we understand that. It was just, I think the biggest concern is that there's no lights, no blue or red lights flashing. the cruisers are traveling at excessive speed. We understand they're probably going to a call, but when you've got vehicles moving in the area, it would, we're after everybody for safety lights when men are working. Why wouldn't this be a safe working regulation?
Thank you. Questions from the members? Councillor Columbus.
And the Brook, Hillcrest Sidewalk.
Yeah, totally disregarding the detour route. They're supposed to be turning off, but they still go through every morning, 5:30 in the morning. And I don't know whether we should get in touch with the owners of these trucks and launch a complaint, because I don't see them ever getting pulled over. They just keep going, truck after truck, creating a hazard. But to the chief there, acting inspector, or staff sergeant, I guess, yeah. Have we had a spy cam on this road lately?
Speed spy?
Yeah.
The last speed spy report we did was back in July, actually July 4th. We measured eastbound and westbound traffic, and particularly eastbound, we found that about 15% of the vehicles were traveling more than 20 kilometers over the posted limit. Westbound traffic not as significant, about 5% traveling above the, or more than 20 kilometers over the limit. Now, in response to that, we did do a focus patrol back in August. We dedicated about 10 hours straight out there, and we had 7 charges. August being our peak busy season, not as much time to dedicate. So we've since opened another focus patrol, opened it November 12th. It's currently running. And to this point, we have 26 charges related to that focus patrol.
And if I can add to that, it's been well noticed and thanked by the locals in the area, because it starts during those periods. You can see the speed has been knocked down, but as I say, the trucks but everything, I let it at that there is a problem. And what we'd like to see is the double lines right through, and then the speed reduction from the top of the hill on the east side of the Cockshut right through to Tisdale, because Tisdale is an issue and now with the new subdivision that's been proposed, that's waiting for the water moratorium. That's just going to increase traffic again. So Tisdale's becoming a major intersection. To go one step farther from the residents of the Tisdale Road is that nobody walks there anymore. That used to be a walk road, running road for the joggers, walk their dogs. Nobody walks that road anymore. The 60 kilometers through there, people laugh at it. That's not it. It's 80 down through there.
Scott, is that the posted speed, 60?
60, yes, on the Tisdale Road.
Thank you.
So it's the nature of the way today is speed.
Yep.
And as I say, we'd like to see it just for our own safety. Like for one thing is us on the south side of the St. John's Road, if we're going to Dover, you come out of your driveway, you turn right and go to the Cockshut to go into town. And when you come home, you come back Tisdale, so you turn right into your driveway so you don't cross traffic. It's that bad.
Yep.
So it's...
And I can assure you that every time the county repaves a road, the speeds go up. Continuing, Councillor
From the
Columbus.
statistics that you shared with us, Staff Sergeant, do you see that we should be reducing the speed to 70?
Based on the numbers that we have presented here, it might be a viable option. If we have that many vehicles going 20 plus kilometers over, if that was brought down, say by 10, we'd have, folks that are probably traveling in the area of 90 kilometers an hour. Then I'm just being realistic on what would happen out on the roadway.
Well, that I am too, is that if you have, I am quite certain most of the traffic going through there is doing 100, between 90 and 100. I agree with you 100%. If we could lower it to 70, is what the residents along there, well, at least they might be doing 80 through here. That's the, you know, the attitude that we have.
Anything further, Mike?
Well, a lot of traffic on their concession roads travels 90 to 100, but it's the volume of traffic along with the speed that's an issue here.
Yes. Yeah, everybody's got to get home, so everybody's speeding and.
We'll do a roll-up when we finish here about what's possible and what's not possible.
Yeah.
Member Murphy?
Well, you come on out to the house and I'll put the lawn chair out and you can sit and watch it every day. You can sit there for 3 hours and enjoy the entertainment.
Okay, we won't get into a discussion.
But I'm not gonna, that's
Yeah.
all I'm saying, I'm not gonna get in an argument.
Yeah.
It's a very bad problem there, and, I know where you live, right, and I understand what you're saying, but you know how fast you travel down Tisdale. Have you talked to the residents along there? I think you should, is another thing I'm suggesting.
Thanks, Scott.
And the other is the visibility. It is good visibility, I will
Yeah.
agree.
Scott, I think we heard the issues. Let's see if
Yeah.
we can move to some solutions here. But
Yeah.
I want to ask the staff sergeant a question related to the statistics, John, that you put forward, of the most current activity there by the OPP, Norfolk Detachment. Do we have a breakout of how many of those vehicles are trucks and how many are cars?
Mr. Chair, I do not.
Okay.
I do not know.
I just don't want to
yeah.
explode a problem with the trucks if it's not the trucks doing this. And I'm not disputing anything that Mr. Bruley is saying here, but
No, I don't have the data as
Okay.
to whether it's a commercial motor vehicle or not.
okay, anyone else from the board wish to speak? George, then Mike.
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Burley, excellent presentation. I think this is a no-brainer. One would think that increased patrols and a painted solid line would help in the meantime, in the short term. Would you agree with me?
50% on, if I can just state why, is I understand is manpower is a huge thing with our OPP. They have got a large area to cover. They could not designate somebody here all the time. As the Sergeant said, they did a speed spy and they put 10 hours in, right? You would almost have to have a car there, like, solid. So my thing is to save the manpower hours. Let our officers go out and do their job in other areas where they're needed. To reduce the speed in that area for that short distance takes the pressure off them, slows the traffic down at least some, and hopefully save a life is what I'm at. And the other part, what I said about the county, for the sake of a few signs and some paint, let's try it. Let's give it a test. To me, it would be a big improvement, but I'll leave it with the council.
Thank you. Further, George? Mike?
Back to the Staff Sergeant. Can you give us the percentage of speeders over 20 again, please?
From the Speed Spy study in July, eastbound traffic, 15% were more than 20 kilometers over the speed limit. Westbound traffic, 5% over the speed limit. And eastbound, we measured 5,693 vehicles. Westbound, we measured 6,205 vehicles.
Thank you.
I was going to add one thing to that. I've never seen a truck pulled over. We've watched, and I'll give the OPP credit that when they do their patrols, they are busy.
Yeah, hence my question about whether it's cars or trucks. And we know that there is excessive speed along there. So thank you very much for your presentation. A motion to accept the deputation, and we'll talk about some solutions. George Santos and Dave Murphy. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Scott?
I have a petition from the...
Okay. Just leave it on the desk and we'll pick it up. So, going to what we've heard from Scott, and Scott, enjoy your retirement. There are issues here that certainly fall within the realm of Norfolk County Council and the Roads Division specifically. And I don't know what would precipitate a study. They have their own rules that are imposed on them by the province under the legislation and policies that they have. But what we're looking to, made my notes over here, is having Her Worship and Councillor Columbus take this forward when the minutes do approve, or at any point before that. Is it possible to reduce the speed limit there without a study? That's the first question, if you would take that forward. The second question would be the painting of double line, no passing, certainly within some distance prior to the intersections, whether it's a blue line or whether it's St. John's Road, or the Cockshutt, and on the St. John's Road. And along Tisdale, the placing of signs for children, buses, that type of thing, as was requested, and share the road signs. Although the intent of share the road originally was for bicycles, but they send a clear message. So I do ask if Her Worship and Councillor Columbus will take note of those issues. They'll be certainly in the minutes of this meeting, and when they are presented to council, could you raise that, or at any point before, maybe speaking to the Roads Division and see what can be done sooner rather than later. And to the Staff Sergeant, we know that some of the speed watch signs are being delivered soon. So we would implore you or prevail upon you to see if we could put one of those out there for a period of time and see what happens.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I believe they're in the process of being put together, and I think the first thing we'll likely have is our portable sign, which we could certainly deploy in the area.
Thank you very much, sir. Anything further from the members? Mike?
I noticed that Tisdale Road, I drive it quite a bit there, and it's pretty dark there. I think we need an overhead street light there at that intersection.
I'll leave that to your...
And that's why a lot of vehicles, they're going at a fairly fast speed, and all of a sudden there's Tisdale Road, they throw their brakes on to turn. I think that's a problem that should be addressed also.
I'll leave that to your interactions with the roads department, if you don't mind. Not to be too jocular about the whole thing, and maybe we should go back to gravel roads. Your worship.
I guess my only comment would be, I mean, the line painting makes sense to me, especially going down the hill like that. But I wouldn't get the hopes up that it's going to happen anytime soon. I think our line painting's been done for the year, so it would have to happen when we go to do a tender for line painting next year.
That's a contracted service, right?
Well, the line painting is a contracted service, so it's all been done, I believe, for this year now on our roads. So it wouldn't happen until the next time that we had a contract that they could add it to the list when they did the roads next year.
Dave?
Yeah, Chair, I do also believe in the solid line before the intersection, and signage never hurts.
Anything further on this particular topic? Go ahead, Councillor Columbus.
We have some areas where we have put engine brake signs up,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be another request, I would think.
Is the engine brake noise an issue? Yeah? Okay. So we'll just add that to the list of signage. The last thing we want to do, of course, is create a forest of signs going down the highway. Did you want to say something, John?
I think in totality, though, a lot of the responsibility for this has to fall to the drivers who are actually using the road. And that's part of the education, enforcement, and engagement bit here, too. Drivers have to take responsibility. They ultimately control how their vehicles operate on those roadways. So in line with anything that would be done in this case would be obviously an educational piece and backed up with enforcement.
Now, would the educational piece come from our policing service or from the county?
I think it would have to be a combination of both.
Okay,
I think county messaging could be clear as to why any, if and why any changes were made. And from our perspective, it's always about road safety, and our messaging is out there fairly consistently on that.
Excuse my ignorance on the issue, and I should know this. Is there a period of the year or periods within the year where traffic enforcement other than ride and distracted driving are activated?
We generally have a campaign every month that focuses on one particular area of traffic safety.
Okay.
And generally there's media messaging that goes out prior to any of those initiatives.
Thank you very much. Dave?
Chair, Stelco and Esso are, and local companies, they're very concerned. And I think, again, I'd like to, can the board send out a notice to them? And there's been some concerns by the citizens, more than one, and a presentation been made about truck speeding on those areas. Basically, wouldn't do any harm to send out a letter to these corporations and any of the gravel companies or the hauling companies around to just put their drivers on notice that there have been several complaints on St. John's, and would they inform their companies that they hire to take notice of that? Again, and I relate to the problem I had on Clonmel with the bus company. I immediately contacted the bus company, and they in turn solved the problem, because they are very concerned corporate citizens.
Is there a consensus on that issue with the board members? George?
Mr. Chair, just to add to that, I think it's a great opportunity to educate and make it clear that there is an issue. They might not even be aware of that issue, and they're good corporate citizens. So I don't see a problem. I'm on
Okay.
side.
Owen, you make note of that as an action item, please? Mike?
At the same time, perhaps we could address the issue of these large trucks going through the detour route within the town of Delhi and not following the actual truck route that's prescribed.
Okay. Add that to the action items, sir. Thank you. There are a number of firms along there, Porter Lumber, the Quarry, Air Products, other companies that are near to what is it, Stelco now, I guess it is, and that type of thing. So we'll do some research and find out more, and it's an action item for the committee to address. Sorry, Scott. And we'll take it upon ourselves. We can talk after, sir. Anything further on this issue? Okay. Thank you, Scott. Moving along is the approval correction of the board meetings minutes from October the 21st. If there are no errors, omissions, or corrections, we'll accept those as presented. Seeing none, so done. The second one was an in-camera special meeting on the 12th of November, and that was a meeting that, again, was in camera, and it was to discuss with our solicitor and others about the OPP contract and bylaws, more specifically, and the enforcement of bylaws. If there are no errors, omissions, or corrections, we'll accept those as adopted. Thank you very much. Business arising from the minutes, we will be talking about the community policing committee, and there's a document on your desk when we get to it later in the agenda. And that's it for the moment, unless anyone else has any business arising from the minutes. George?
Mr. Chair, I believe our chief of police referred to Crimestoppers. There was a Miss Amy Bernardo who received a Crimestoppers Award internationally, and there was some mention of her possibly attending and informing us of this.
Okay, we have Crimestoppers coming in January?
So are they coming in January?
January meeting? Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll, if you want to flag that, Owen, as a reminder to the Crimestoppers chairperson, remind me. Neil, thank you. That we'd like him to talk to that issue. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Correspondence, the All Chiefs memo on animal welfare services. We're still keeping our ear to the ground, as our police services are, relative to that legislation. If I have any personal concern with it, it's imposing more work upon our local detachments who aren't experts in this whole area, and I can only hope, although I don't hold up a lot of hope, but I only hope that there is a period where we can consult and have some feedback. And certainly we can do that through our local detachment, or we can do that directly with the Solicitor General. But they're still working on that, and they want to rush it through. I don't mean that in a negative sense, but they want to put it through as soon as possible to deal with animal cruelty specifically, not dealing with dogs barking or dogs in hot cars necessarily, that type of thing. So we'll keep our ear to the ground on that. Any questions or comments about that correspondence? Thank you. We have the OPP monthly report. Staff Sergeant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is for October 2019. Year-to-date overtime dollars spent, $273,547.50, which is 70.57% of our overtime budget. And that's down from last year, where at this point we had spent 83.19%.
A question on that to staff, and I know it's not going to be a large event, but next month we have a Friday 13th. Do you expect overtime to increase during that period?
There will be some overtime attributed to the event, not a significant amount that I anticipate.
Thank you.
Auxiliary
Hang on.
policing
Well,
hours
just a
for...
moment.
Sorry.
Dave?
To the staff sergeant, that's quite a drop, and we attribute that to maybe Friday the 13th, or
Well, part of it would be Friday the 13th. We did staff down for the September event, as it wasn't, it was what we called a medium-sized event. So we were down, I'm going to probably say 60 officers from where we would normally be with that, so that saves some. That would probably be one of the biggest contributors.
a great drop, so I want to,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and
it.
just to continue on that line to the members that are here and to the staff sergeant, in terms of what was presented to council most recently on the cost savings over the last 8 years as a result of the new billing that was brought into being. And I'll talk more about this as we move on to the agenda, but certainly there are other issues that will come into play in the near future that will provide the Norfolk County Policing Service, the OPP, the pleasure or benefit of utilizing their valuable resources on crime prevention and law enforcement more directly, instead of chasing false alarms and other things. By law enforcement, perhaps, we'll be talking about that. Thank you very much for those numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe at this point I might just interject about something we discussed prior, and that is online reporting.
Yes.
And the OPP, particularly this month, is we're doing, I guess, what we call a reintroduction of online reporting, where you can go to our website and you can report crimes such as lost or missing property under $5,000, stolen license plates, theft from vehicles under $5,000, mischief to vehicles under $5,000, mischief under $5,000 in general, theft under $5,000, and driving complaints.
And some of the discussion that we had, John, was around minor accidents. Was that included in the discussion?
The direction we're exploring with minor accidents is actually establishing a collision reporting center.
Thank you.
At the attachment where folks can come in and report minor collisions. We're in the very early stages of it. I know organizationally we're examining the parameters of that right now.
Thank you very much. So we look forward to the reporting issues coming forward in more detail.
Yes. I'll continue with the report.
Yes, please.
Tributes in October. We got to thank you for Ed Sanchuk for promoting the Trick or Treat event in Victoria. Crimestoppers report. Year to date, we've had 483 anonymous tips received this year. Schools are back up and running, and a welcome back letter's been sent to all the schools from Crimestoppers. In terms of promotions, presentations, meetings, they participated at the Norfolk County Fair, the Caledonia Fair, Haldeman County Volunteer Appreciation Night, Delhi Firefighters Halloween Open House, and Rock Point Provincial Park Open House. Media events of note, they are writing script for Eastlink Cable, the Grand Re partnerships featuring unsolved crimes for Haldeman, Norfolk, and also a television feature aired with CHCH featuring an arson in the Norfolk County area. Fundraising events, selling tickets for fundraiser at Boston Pizza on the 15th of January 2020 to promote Crime Stopper Awareness Month. tickets are available through our chairperson or Amy at Crimestoppers. And they're also, at this point, considering alternate ideas and options to raise funds for the program. Other events, they included, they attended the Southwest Zone meeting on October the 3rd in London, and the board is actively seeking new board members. Chairperson Neil Unwin continues to serve as the president of the Haldeman and Norfolk Crimestoppers. October 2019, locally dedicated overtime hours. We had 532.75 hours for municipal and 133 hours for provincial.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, why would it be that much lower compared to the other numbers?
It depends on operations. It depends on what, if any, significant investigations we had going, which would incur significantly more costs. That's why these tend to have an ebb and flow to them, depending on what we have operationally. If we have a significant crime that requires a lot of resources and overtime, you'll see bumps there. If we don't, it makes a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Continuing, sir.
Statistics. Don't know if there's any questions on those.
Is there anything of importance that any member wants to bring forward on those statistics? David?
Not necessarily on the, but just impaired driving. And do you find an increase in the cannabis and impaired driving, or how generally, since it's been legalized, how do you find the versus alcohol?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's been a significant bump in drug impaired operation. I think that's been consistent. We were enforcing it prior to the change in legislation, and I think that number stayed fairly consistent.
Good news, okay.
Thank you. Anything further?
Focus patrols, just a couple updates there. We did a focus patrol in and the area of Concession 3 Townsend due to ongoing mischiefs. We dedicated 9 hours in that area and there were no new mischiefs. As I mentioned earlier, we've got the ongoing focus patrol going on St. John's Road right now. 26 charges up to this point. We also have one going on Evergreen Hill and Queen Street due to stop sign issues. So that's ongoing. I should have a report back at the next meeting. We closed the focus patrol we had running on McDowell Road for speeding. We dedicated 27.75 hours and laid 22 charges in that particular focus patrol.
Anything relative to the construction work in Delhi and the detour that's there? And I know it started with the speeding in front of the high school, that area, but then with the construction.
We did do some speed spy studies, I believe, on Western Ave and Talbot Street. Mm-hmm. And we didn't find significant speeding. Undoubtedly, there's a huge increase in volume of traffic in the area.
Okay, thank you. That's it? Questions to the Staff Sergeant? Thank you very much. Good report, sir. Maybe you should come more often. So that takes us to item 8B, and this is a report that's going to go forward to council. It's a follow-on with all of the discussions that we've had over the past number of months with the community policing committees, their issues with the lack of volunteers and their recommendation to us to collapse those committees into one strategic county committee, and we're moving forward with that. And you will see that there are recommendations from the Police Services Board, and that there are requests to council to be made. And it looks like this is going to happen, and it's a matter of us meeting with community services and finance on budgeting issues, and putting that committee together. So there will be a process that is followed with all these applications for and requests for volunteers going out through clerk's office. Is that correct? Yeah, through the clerk. And so this will happen over the next period of time. I think it's important that we not delay on this issue any longer. I know that the council agenda for December is big, and some items may be deferred until the new year. But having said that, is the roof leaking on you? Again? Okay. So, any questions or comments on the report? George and then Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the council and committee meeting that it will be held on January the 7th, 2020, and I believe in the third paragraph it refers to each year individual budget allocations of approximately $2,000 for the chair committees and each subcommittees, or approximately $20,000 in total annually, has been approved from Norfolk County Council through the annual budget process. So the question I have is, so this has happened over the last 5 years, Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yeah. Well, it's been going on for longer than that.
Okay.
That's for sure. But we're covering a specific period of time here.
Okay.
And that will be adjusted as necessary going forward in the new committee structure.
Okay. And the question I have, so we have 7 wards, there's 8 councilors plus the mayor, and we're looking for 10 volunteers to represent Norfolk County?
My understanding is we're looking for 1 from each ward as minimum,
Okay.
and then staff advisors that would make up the balance.
So that I understand correctly, then this is a branch of the Police Services Board and also Norfolk County?
Yes. It
Correct.
comes under our ambit, Police Services Board ambit. It comes under us,
Okay.
and we will receive reports from them, have discussions with them, frequent meetings with them,
Okay.
to look strategically at what the issues are in the various communities across Norfolk, and maintain some of the programs that are currently ongoing and develop new ones.
Okay. And last question, Mr. Chair. So if they have a budget, then I'm wondering if we have a budget.
We
And the
don't.
reason I ask that, because when I look at the agenda, I really don't see anything that refers to a budget.
Yeah. That was one of the issues that I wanted to raise with the mayor and council at some point in the near future. We do not have a budget. We do have money in the bank that comes from the auction sales of bicycles and other things. But those funds are earmarked for crime prevention, frontline issues, as much as we wish to invest in those. So we do not have a budget. So what happens in funding this new committee, and in the past, the various committees, was the request would go forward to community services, it would go forward to budget period, and then based on decisions at budget, those monies would be released to us. And we would monitor each of the committees, and then now going forward, the new committee, what do you want to spend the money on? What is your plan? And the funding would be based on those things more strategically. And then we would monitor, what did you spend it on? When did you have the events? And there would be a full reporting circle that would take place.
So the last question, Mr. Chair, is the OPP, or our chief of police, is he well aware? I know he's been CC'd on this, but has he had any?
He's attended the meetings with us, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Owen?
Yeah, and Inspector Vargas also reviewed the terms of reference in the staff report, and he had no concerns.
Mike?
Okay, page 3 of 5 at the top, it talks about $12,000 has traditionally been allocated to the policing committee.
Yep.
But then on page 19, or page 1 of 5, it talks about $20,000. So, Owen, how many dollars have we put into the operating budget? Because that's part of the recommendation, isn't it?
Yes, so each committee in the last 3 to 4 years has gotten $2,000 each, which has worked out to $12,000 a year. But in 2014, when the previous terms of reference was passed, council set an upper limit on what could be requested at 20,000. And those requests go through the police service board, and then we forward it to the community services to be included in the budget.
Okay, so have we made the decision, or did you put the 20,000 in, or is it?
That is in the recommendation here, the motion that we can hopefully pass today.
I see that, yeah.
To just, to get some money reserved for them next year.
Right, okay. Good. Thanks.
Your worship?
I might have missed this. How much was being brought over? Like what's currently in the account?
There are funds currently sitting in bank accounts out there, and we want to bring those back in and hopefully roll them over to the new committee without a lot of problems and administrative issues, depending on what finance wants to do. But the upper limit, what we'll be recommending to council is $20,000 going into the new year, new budget.
From 12 to 20 this year.
That's what was spent. We don't know what the strategic plan will look like. We don't know what new activities might be added other than Lock It, Lose It, bike rodeos, the program in Cortland for dementia patients.
But you also,
yeah.
In addition to that though, you're also bringing over money from the previous account.
Yeah, and those would form part of that base. If they're, I'm not sure what the number is. Do we have a number there, Owen?
We don't have an exact number. It's under 1,000 for most of the committees. And the recommendation here is just the same as last year. It's $12,000 for 2020. And the actual distribution of the funds would have to be approved by the police service board once the new committee is formed.
Yeah. Certainly we want to be very, very aware of what spending will take place. At the same time, we don't want to choke the committees off from the good works that they are doing and could do. It's community-based, and the new selected volunteers may have some innovative ideas that we want to promote and put forward. Certainly one of the things that I've looked at is, not to use the trademark too extensively, but if you see something, say something type of thing. We can change the nomenclature on that however we want, because we have county employees on the road all the time, and if they see something, they should promote that. And citizens who are driving on roads all the time. It's a very proactive intelligence gathering, data gathering exercise. So again, we want to be very conscious of the budget issues, but at the same time, we don't want to choke this new committee off in terms of being funded for initiatives. Did I say, George?
Mr. Chair, my last question. When I was reviewing, and I'm a product of the community policing, I was a chair for the Simcoe community policing for about 3 to 4 years when it started back in 2000 to 2004. I see no indication here or reference of youth. So we have 5 major high schools. And it would be nice to have something in here that references a representative of one of the 5 local high schools to give us a youth perspective. I think we're lacking in that respect. I mean, we do have the business community, we have the community in general, but we might want to focus in that regard.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's a decision as to whether we want to have a youth representation on the strategic committee or a subcommittee focused specifically on youth issues. And certainly the high schools that we have in Norfolk County, 5 of them, could form a subcommittee under this umbrella. I just don't want to get too bureaucratic with the whole thing at the top level, and let this new committee function as best they can.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I mean, they're going to have to function because there's a lot of rules and regulations here.
Yeah.
I mean, any volunteer in this county of Norfolk is going to have to be well-versed on their roles and responsibilities. In my past experience, you would have a chair and a vice chair and a treasurer and minutes. This is definitely something that I see for our police services board. I mean, this is basically an arm of the police services board.
Yeah, going forward into January specifically, once council deals with this, and they may not deal with it until January itself, depending on how bulky the upcoming agenda is, and the clerk has already informed me that it is quite packed. So we will meet and kick this around in terms of how we see it functioning, working with our police services, of course, and because as we saw at 2 meetings ago, the inspector presented us, or 3 meetings ago, presented us with a list of all the things that they're involved with in the community. And somehow we have to merge that and make sure that we don't replicate, duplicate things that are happening, or on the positive side, meld those into things that are happening. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Owen.
And just to address the specific concern about kind of the complexity of it, it's just an edited version of their current terms of reference, just updated so that it's a single committee now, rather than having the one committee and then multiple subcommittees. So it is the current terms of reference, just updated.
Anything further on this topic? So we need a approval from the PSB to move it forward? Motion?
Yes, there's a recommendation there, which should be, or could be the motion, just to approve the terms of reference and to approve the $12,000 request to the community services department. I can read it there if you'd like.
No, that's fine. So we need a mover and a seconder. Dave? George? Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. So that will go forward. Then we go to item 8C, location of speed watch signs. We don't have a proposed listing at this point. Those signs, as the staff sergeant has indicated, are being delivered and assembled as we speak. Hopefully by the end of the year, they'll all be here in our custody, certainly the county's custody. Staff sergeant indicating that the committee on accident reduction will meet and go through a potential listing based on all of the data that I currently have. This board will see that list and have their input before any approvals are given. I don't want the board to overrule them necessarily. We may have a strong opinion on certain sites and those types of things, and then the committee can go back and debate that and discuss that. But I don't want the board to be dealt out of the discussion, that's for darn sure. David?
And I want to offer thanks. I've been on this board a while, and next month's my last month. But I do want to thank the mayor and Councillor Columbus for moving forward in a time of short funds. And I think Mike was a big mover on this, and the mayor also was involved. And I want to thank you for moving forward on these speed watch signs. I do believe they're a real deterrent. I see them, and they do bring right to you that, and then you immediately look at your speed. But thanks again, Madam Mayor and Councillor Columbus, for moving forward on those speed watch signs.
Anything further? And of course, it has yet to be. This is a capital budget item. Was the capital budget approved, or is it all the omnibus going forward in January? Yes.
Most of this section likely has been approved, but I would not be able to say with certainty if not the remaining.
So there'll be an omnibus
Correct.
bylaw in January sometime or February. Yeah, okay, that's the normal practice. Thank you. Anything further? Thank you. Facilitating Norfolk County Council policing priorities. Owen and I have been in discussion with how do we approach council and get their input in terms of what their priorities are in policing. We've developed a short checklist of items that they might want to consider, and then the last item would be anything else you want to throw in on the list. So we'll share that, Owen, and hopefully it can go forward to council as an action item. We want to make sure that the priorities of council are fed into what the headquarters of OPPC as their priorities, and, but having respect for the fact that when the Municipal Policing Bureau stood at that podium and said, the inspector is our chief of police and is at the beck and call of council. I'll take that literally. So we'll see where we go with that whole issue. It'll prompt some discussion at council around things like, do you want to see more traffic enforcement, whether it's ride or distracted or that type of thing. It will be fed by some of the other things that we're going to do, hopefully, to move the police resources out of chasing things that they shouldn't be chasing, such as bylaws, like no more barking dogs and that kind of stuff, and freeing up those resources, false alarms, which I'll talk about in a second, and moving those resources to frontline activities. So Owen will share that with the board along with the minutes that we'll be sending out, the draft minutes. Okay, thank you very much. And on the issue of false alarm bylaw, I just want to say to you that I saw the draft for the first time last night. Staff were very busy on a lot of issues, and they finally got the draft of the report and the bylaw to me and supporting documents. I've asked for a meeting with staff to go over that and tighten it up a whole bunch, make it more precise and concise, and make sure there's no ambiguity around the fact that we're not saying to the police force, don't respond to alarms. And I've said that many times. That's not the intent here. The intent is to say, yes, go to alarms that are phoned in or dispatched, absolutely. But if it's false, there's going to be a penalty to pay. It's as simple as that. And there will be, hopefully, a verification process that will take place that will weed out the majority of false alarms. So you'll see that shortly. Again, because the agenda in December is chock-a-block full, this probably will be deferred to January. So we have plenty of time. I don't want to rush this. I don't want to put out a bad product. I want to make sure that all of the players are involved in the discussions, that being our police services and our legal services. So we'll have that meeting very shortly and tighten that whole thing up, and you'll see it in short order. But as I say, most likely it will be deferred to the January meeting. Then again, of course, their budget time is in January, and who knows what the agenda will look like in January. Any other business coming from members of the board? Mike?
Just have you, Mr. Chair, been in touch with this Christian person, I forget his last name, starts with an F, in Kingston, and he's involved with the same movement that we're looking at right now in Eastern Ontario, with trying to cut costs and looking at alarms and all those things. Somehow I picked up some information on it a week or so ago, and I thought it was
In Eastern Ontario?
Kingston PSB.
No, what
He's a
I've...
professor in some, I think it's Royal Military College in Kingston.
Oh, if you have that reference, please send it forward.
Okay.
What you're all aware of that I have done is send a missive to Fred. I always mispronounce his last name. Anyway, he's the executive director of the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards. And I've talked to Patrick Straw, who is the executive director of CANASA, which is a Canadian Security Association, and informed them that we're very interested in having a discussion at the spring conference on this whole issue of false alarms and reducing the incident of false alarms. So I did get a bounce back from one of the members of the board of directors of the Ontario Association, and copied that to everyone. And Kenneth Gansel, who I know from a way back, said that in Niagara they're already doing this, and their alarm verification process in 2018, and made a big difference in policing delivery, and we eliminated charging for false alarms at the same time. So all of these things that Owen and Nikki Sloat are looking at in terms of examples that they can find out there are being fed into the draft, and this is where I want to make sure that it's concise and precise before we all see it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, just to add to this discussion, it is my understanding from the recent detachment commanders conference with the deputy commissioner that the OPP is certainly moving in a direction in terms of false alarms as well. The other point I want to add to that is 911 calls.
Yes.
We're currently in a process now where there'll be significantly more screening at dispatch level, which hopefully down the road will eliminate us attending a significant amount of 911 calls.
Fantastic. So the conversation is engaged on both false alarms and 911 drop calls and that topic. Hopefully, again, the objective here is to free up our valuable resources to do frontline work in terms of crime prevention and law enforcement, among the other things that are listed in the Police Services Act. So we'll look forward to sending a draft to the board, to legal, to the policing service, the OPP, and council for comment. And as I say, then we'll go forward with it. It looks like a very positive thing. We will probably be the first community that uses the OPP to launch such a program. All the other ones that we could find in researching had their own police services. The cities, those type of things, Kingston, Hamilton, Toronto. I don't see any difference, because I'm going to repeat again, our ambition is not to say to the police, don't go to a call. Let's make this very clear. If the call comes in, yes, you're dispatching to go. If it turns out to be false, report it back, and we'll take the action from there. So I don't want any misinformation out there or apprehension that we're going to give direction to the police not to go to calls. That's not true. Anything further on this topic? Thank you very much. Question period. I got to talk to you, right? Thank you. And then we will move into closed session if there's nothing else from around the table. Yes, sir. I have a motion here. It's a standard motion that we have every meeting. I need a mover and a seconder. George? Mike? And a vote on that. All in favor? Thank you very much. Here you go, Owen.